Hello YouTube, we're today with another video, and I'm talking about another topic that I consider very important, considering, in 2019 of Roblox, a lot of groups have been falling apart, and with that all being said, I have to argue the reason why that is. This is regardless of my current reputation or anything else, and in my opinion, because I know, people are always arguing, we have all this hate, why should we listen? Well, I have had experience, and I'm not saying this to screw anyone up. It's really the truth. It's not like anything else where I'm saying you all should abandon this, do that, do this. It's really going to explain a lot of current issues. So I'm going to start with actually a group. And this group that I'm referring to is called the New German Empire 59. A lot of you guys know this group, or have heard of this group. It used to have like 21,000 members. Now it has exactly 15,000 members. It's going to drop down to 14,000 really soon. And this used to be a very, very large group. Unfortunately, about a month ago, this group had kind of like a civil war with itself. And what happened was the owner went inactive, so the 2IC, who was named Romulus or whatever, made another group. And this was called something very, very similar. So he made this group, and his was called something like the German Empire 1939, or I don't really, or 1930s, or something along those lines. He created it. So this guy made that group. And when he made this group, basically, a lot of other people made their own groups. So what happened was with this group, I'm trying to find it. I can't really, it's not that one. But you guys see what I mean in a second. So he's currently working on an Israel group. However, he did have another group. There it is. This one right here. So this group he abandoned because he was afraid of it getting content deleted by Roblox. So he made a new group called Israel, 1960s or something. But when he abandoned this group, a bunch of other groups began forming. And that includes a Tyskland group, that includes a Kingdom of Norway. There it is. Yeah, there's this one by Wilfried Württemberg. You'll realize that this guy was once a Wilhelm. If his profile loads. Yeah, he was once a Mecklenburg. And then we also have Coyote. Coyote left TNG actually earlier. He actually was the original owner of TNG. But we're going to include him in this because he also owns a group that has a lot of members. So you're all kind of realizing my point. My point is groups are splitting apart from their own original collectives. My groups have always been stuck together as one. The only time this kind of didn't really work was when I quit Roblox. When I quit Roblox, 6 different knockoff Richter groups formed. A Dutch group, a knockoff TRI, a knockoff Korea, a French group with a Korean aesthetic, a group called Imperial State of Tehran, and then there was one also called the Frankish Karovec Nation or something like that, which was a knockoff of H3FM with a Richter aesthetic. So at the time, Hadrian was a loyalist. Now he isn't, as you all already know. And Hadrian gathered all of these groups and said, hey, the Richter's doctrine said that we shall remain unified. The issue with this doctrine is now there is no leader. So I think we should make a council, and instead all of us should be loyal to the Richter collective and not to the leader. No one liked this idea, but they all agree with the unification idea, so everyone abandoned their groups and joined Tehran. Which Tehran failed in the end, but he unified everyone successfully because I told him to. I would have told anyone else in the car, I would have done the same exact thing as Hadrian. It would have worked because that was my command. So that all worked out. The thing is all of these other groups don't have the same policies. They don't have the same loyalty, and that's why loyalty is important. It's what binds groups together. Coyote did have loyalty. In fact, when he left, a lot of people followed him. The reason why a lot of people didn't follow him was he lacked propaganda, and he lacked actual statistics and truth. The truth was not on his side. Coyote made a lot of lies, he made a lot of corrupt decisions, and this was too obvious to the public. So a lot of reasonable people didn't want to follow Coyote. But all the people that believed in a successful state and stability of the state followed him. And to this day, his group has had over 50 members, even though it was supposed to launch in late August and it never did. So these groups split apart. So there's 70 members in this group. There's how many people are in the new Israel group? We're about to find out. Sorry. There's about 29 people in Tyskland, but to be honest, I would say 130. So I would say 130 people in Tyskland. Let's go over to Israel. God, how far away is this thing? There it is. Okay. There's 308 members in the German Empire in 30, so that's 300 more people. We're not going to count TNG because that's where they all originate from. And, that's a whole different story. 87 people in the Israel group. There's also, Tehran is also owned by original TNG loyalists. These guys used to all be a part of TNG. Most of these guys, anyway. Richard, Kepferol was a Duke. Hadrian was Supreme Commander of them. Hayden, Union Infinity, I believe, was J.R. Felix. All these guys were once in that group. And there's also a Norway group. I won't be able to find that group because it only has about 20 members or so. But I know for a fact that there's a Norway group called the Kingdom of Norway. And it has a lot of people in it that... So you'll get the point. The reason why groups I think are failing are because they keep on being, there's all this self-ambition. A lot of groups, a lot of people on this platform want to take control. They want to lead things. They want to have authority. And that's natural because that's really what this game is strategy. The main fun aspect of this game is either two things. You either have to roleplay on this platform, or rather in this genre as a soldier or something, and you have sort of a phase going on, like I did in the first 2015 and early 2016 before I became a leader. Or you're here because you like the authority aspect, and you have more fun commanding actual human beings than a CPU or AI in a whole other game. For instance, in Hearts of Iron 4, you're fighting up against AI with a difficulty, and you're commanding AI troops. It can either be glitchy, or it can be very boring at the same time because it's really kind of easy. You don't have to worry about obedience. You don't have to really worry about loyalty unless you're playing as another player. And in that aspect, it's easy. Meanwhile, Roblox and its leadership focuses more on the government and the power aspect of it. And it's more about taking power, maintaining power, and executing anything you want with that power. How long can you take over a country with that power? It's more about, maintaining power, and people love that aspect. I think half the people that even play this game play it for that aspect. Meanwhile, unfortunately, the other half just play it just to have fun and reenact. Back in the day, 85% played this game to roleplay and reenact, but ever since the people have accomplished high-ranking roles, they get this ambitious desire for a rank. For instance, when I first played war groups on this genre, I played it for roleplay. Once I became a field marshal, I looked at it from a different perspective of power, and instead of role-playing like I usually did, I more or less started focusing more on myself. For instance, if someone disagreed with me, instead of taking it like it was the game, I was afraid that they were going to disagree with me and eventually oppose me, because that was just how I was when I was 13 years old and thinking. Over time, you learn how to maintain that, you learn how to adapt, you learn how to tolerate people, so on and so forth. So a lot of people, when they're in a group, they become a general, and that group collapses. You're in the same situation that the Weimar Republic was in the early 20s. I'm taking that illusion because it's the same situation. The group is collapsing, it's in a depression, and you don't know what to do. You want something to be done, so make your own group. You say, guys, we're making our own group, we're making our own collection, and your overall goal is to prevent what happened with that group. And since you're so inclined to lead, you don't care about what will actually happen. You just know that your group failed and there's no other plan going on. So make your own group. To continue that on, you kind of have to go with the flow of power. You have to kind of strive for the ambition of power and so on and so forth to kind of keep that roll up. You don't really care much about the aspect of someone else making another group or about what the leadership is going to do. People just go on their own thing because they also add that on, the power aspect. You're doing something good, but you also get that bonus of having power. So people follow this illusion and they make their own groups. That's why when I didn't really fall apart, that's why when I quit the genre, the first thing Sovereign MK Richter did was make a new group because he wanted to relive what he didn't get to do. He knew for a fact I wasn't going to do another TRI because we were all bored of the aesthetic. And he knew I wasn't going to do any of that, so he created his own group that followed my ideas. They were loyal to me still. They did a lot of my traditions, but they didn't really lead it properly. And other groups were like, well, we don't like the TRI aesthetic, so we're going to do our own group. So we had people like JF Richter form the Dutch Kingdom, and then we had people like Enver, who is a Turkish nationalist in real life, form a Turkish group, and then we had people like who else? So on and so forth. People formed their own groups because they wanted to do their own thing. No one really cared for the collective because they thought that they were the collective. and they wanted that bonus of having the power. They're in an emergency stance where they can either choose the wait or they can choose power. And a lot of people have this fear that they'll never get power. It's always focused on power, 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 power. And unfortunately, for many of these people, it won't ever get out of their heads. In fact, a lot of people that leave the Richters leave because they realize that they'll never get the ability to lead my collective. That's why people like Sam Richter left as soon as he lost the position of successor, because he knew that he was too unfit for the position, but yet he had a strong ambition to take the position. And a lot of people are actually very incompetent, but enjoy leading. And that's a huge flaw. It's like, I don't know why. I mean, if I was really bad at leading, I wouldn't want to lead. I'd be paranoid. As so many of us are like in real life. In real life, we don't like making speeches. We don't like um, being in control because it's a very stressful situation. We get anxiety, and we're in a sense incompetent, where we have this lack of confidence. But on this game, people are the opposite, because with power, you can get a lot more things done. Because on this game, whoever has the discipline, whoever has the obedience to himself, has the power. Unlike in real life, I guess, where everyone is kind of more fragile when it comes to those kind of things. You don't really have obedience. It's a more different system, as we all already know. So that's where I think people go wrong with this game. Back in the day before 2018, you had Lewis and you had Nerfer. Then you had the knockoff Axis groups, because there wasn't really any other ally groups besides the Russians. There's the backbusting Russian military, there's the CCCP, there's the RCCP. There is the USM, the British military, which was the Commonwealth, including Australia and Canada, and then you had the three communist nations. Then you had about 24 Axis nations. And this is all because when it comes to power, people think of a government or ideology that gives them more power. So they think of a more absolute idea. When they think of the Allies, they think of democracy. But in a sense, you can be a democracy and still be, or you can be allied and still have authoritative nature. That is where monarchism and other non-aligned ideologies come through, but not many people like that either, because monarchism still gives people a lot of rights, so many people still go Axis either way. And that's why back in that day, you had so many Axis groups. It wasn't because people were kind of in a phase of wereabouism or anything like that, but rather because they wanted that power, and the only way to obtain that power, they had to go to a more totalitarian nation or totalitarian aesthetic. So Lewis had to deal with this for a long time, starting with Turbine and eventually Lavo after he betrayed him, of course, and various other leaders that would betray Lewis Otto from their own groups, and it would split the Axis in half or in quarters or however else, and that made them disunified. Meanwhile, people unified under USM because they weren't really up for the power struggle as much, because it just didn't. USM had about 500,000 members, and if you made a knockoff USM, you wouldn't get very far, because the current USM, for a fact, they have immeasurable power. You can't measure it because that's over 500,000 people. And let's say you do get a group with 100 members, they have 100,000 members. They're going to get 100 people on their game every single day. So with that all being said, they didn't think they really had a chance. People did British military because that was an original idea, the original aesthetic. Same thing in the Russian groups. The Russians, as everyone knows, that Stalinist Russia was more or less a totalitarian regime. It was more closer to a right-wing government because it was more focused on the political sphere and an authoritative sphere rather than the socialist sphere. So people really would choose the Russians also whenever it came to the Allied aesthetics. So with that all being said, I don't really know the solution to the issue that much, but I will give some ideas on this. I'm just identifying the issue because a lot of people do this. They make another group. I remember back in the day, it'd be like 2017, and you'd want to do, for instance, a Russian group back in 2018. Well, you couldn't because there was already like 6 Russian groups or Soviet groups that had more than 30 people online on their games with over 10,000 members per each, or over 5,000, I guess. And that was kind of an over-exaggeration. More than 5 of them. And Represalios, you had Tarek Backles, which eventually switched over to what's that guy's name? He's now known as Reznov. You guys know what I'm talking about. The guy that buys groups. There's that guy. You had Russian military as well. That one was slightly more inactive, but it was active nevertheless. You had another one, a knockoff one, and there was about one or two more that had a similar activity rate. So whenever someone thought of a Russian group, despite the aesthetic or anything, you couldn't really do one because there was already other ones, and if you tried to, it would fall apart. And that's the same issue here, except it's with the different collectives. You now have you had this collective of people that served Coyote. Then it split in half because Coyote left, and then it was between Wilhelm and Coyote. Coyote's group couldn't even launch because it lacked the activity to even launch. It lacked officers, it lacked any proper resources to anything. Because most of their good loyalists are now with Wilhelm. So Wilhelm was doing decent, but he also lacking active because most of the other active members that were brain dead followed Coyote. So eventually made his own group, he launched ads, got some fresh new meat, fresh new loyalists, well then he abandoned it. And after he abandoned it, his group split again between the Tiskland collective, and now there's a Turan collective, and now there's a Norway collective, and now there's a fourth one that I forget who. I'm not going to think of it. So now Turan gets about 10 people in their games. Norway I've not seen active. Tiskland I've not seen active. And then Israel group hasn't launched yet, but they have a decent size. They don't have as much as Germany did, though, because when he made the new German group, they had about 200-something members. Now it has 300 because of ads. His Israel group has less than 100 members. In fact, it had 100 members a few days ago, and they're losing members because there's more groups popping up. And so with this all being said, all of those groups are now dying. And people are saying, maybe it's because of meme cults. And I've said this myself, it is because meme cults are contributing to the death of these groups because it makes the games cancerous, it makes the groups cancerous, and that toxicity, that tumor that's growing makes people not want to participate or associate with those people because they want to reenacting a immersive experience. They do not obtain one because of those memes, that toxic culture. So that contributes to a group's downfall, but isn't the core reason why. This is the core reason why I think the groups are falling apart. But, now with USM, you had that huge 700,000 member USM. Now you have, 2 model USMs, you have a Crash, whatever, you have all these other USMs out there. You have all these other border games out there. Flamingo went on about this too. Flamingo said, now you have all these other border games ever since IRF came around because they just make their own group and it splits apart the activity. So, in my own opinion, a lot of you guys that make groups and it's just dying there, sitting there, just merge your group. One of my few friends that is currently running in Korea, I don't really know his name, but I might be able to find his group in the group list. He has about 100-something members. But he's currently trying to merge his group into another group. This is his group. I gave him my maps for about 3,000, and all the tech and everything costed over 10,000, I think. But currently, he's trying to merge with another Korean group. Are they on my list? They are not on my list because his group gets about 10 people per trainings or raids or events. And his other group used to get about 30 people, and now they're down to 15 people. And so he's trying to merge with them because he knows if he merges, he combines an activity. You'll remember that when me and Alexander Strangelove combined our groups, we had 50 people on every single day. We combined our resources, combined everything, and it created a super group. It worked with Lewis, and it somewhat worked with Lavo. And that's the thing people need to do. The reason why they aren't doing it is, no offense, but people's IQ is kind of like room temperature right now. It's kind of low in the sense that no one really wants to. Their ego goes above their IQ, and that's not really good. That their ego has grown over their IQ in the sense that now they would rather own and have power than combine forces for the sake of activity. And I know why people do this too. They don't want to have a corrupt leader that's incompetent. They don't want to have a leader that they can't trust and it's going to cause issues or anything like that. They have this paranoia. What they don't realize, though, is, if that is really true, you can make your own group if everyone else in that group agrees with it. If everyone in the group thinks that your reason is justified, that this guy is corrupt, blah, 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 make your own group. Otherwise, you'll split the activity. Both of your groups will just die, and you'll just be standing there like an idiot while your group is dead, while his group is dead, and nothing will really happen. Some people can say, well, it worked for you because when I was in German forces, I made my own group, and that group became more active and killed the other group. Well, that's because I had resources. I didn't just split apart a group and didn't just sit there and do nothing. What I'm saying is that if you don't know how to lead and you're just going out there for the first time leading and you don't really know what you're doing, but you're doing it because you have an ambition for power, don't do that. Okay, if you're a competent leader, you know how to lead, you have over 20,000 Robux, and you think you can launch a group while splitting it, and you think, and you'll know for a fact, know for a guaranteed fact that you'll survive for more than a week, then go for it. But other than that, don't waste your time because you're wasting everyone else's time and you're killing off activity. And plus, I mean, it'll make it easier for me when I conquer everyone because that way I don't have to go to 1,000 groups. And I'll only be about 100 groups, you know? Saves more time for me too. So, you know, and on a serious note, though, um, that is why the Richters have been so successful. That's why I've always had centralization. Because if we're centralized, it combines activity. It's why we never die. We lose members every rarely. Rarely do we lose members, and if we do, we get new ones. As of lately, a lot of Richters have retired. A lot of Richters have quit. Um, to do real life, but we obtain that. Through these groups, we get lots of new Richters, lots of new loyalists. My collective expands all the time. Yeah, I got more hate. Yeah, I got more enemies. And yeah, I can admit that Italy probably would have had more activity than Scotland does currently. But let's be honest here. I've not been active on my own games. And my games have gotten about 20 people in a training. That's an accomplishment. Because back in the day, for my game, like Fort Little to be active to about 35 people, I had to join the game. Otherwise, if I wasn't in the game, I'd have about 20 people to 30 people on average, which was also quite an accomplishment for that time. So, you know, right now, I'm really proud that my men can now do things on their own without me trying to be in game. A lot of people see this as like a bad thing, that my men kind of had to rely on me and then I had to do all the work. Or sorry, that they relied on me. But people don't realize that it forced me to get off my butt and do more work. It forced me to actually do stuff for my own group so that, you know, I was actually being a leader, not sitting back and having publics execute for me. I mean, I might sound hypocritical because I had Hadrian do that for Turan, but I wasn't running Turan. Hadrian was not, or sorry, Turan was in the group that I was going to run. It wasn't even really my idea. I gave it aesthetical creation ideas, I gave it musical ideas, and that was really about it. Everything else was on Hadrian and whoever his staff was for that time on Turan. So with that all being said, you know, that was all what it all was. And Turan was active, but it wasn't really a success because it didn't have any resource in the first place to launch. So like, oh, we're going to launch the group. And during launch, they didn't even have any Robux to launch ads for. That's why I call it a failure. Because during their launch, it didn't go so well. And most of their activity was from officers. And I hate that about groups, when all your activity is officers. That's why I have so many private ranks. Because that way, you know, it's a lot more harder to get to a high rank. And it encourages NCOs to take the initiative. So that way you have sergeants hosting stuff. I actually have Lance Corporals co-hosting and Corporals hosting most of my events right now. So that it encourages lower ranks, so when they get to a corporal rank, they can host trainings as well, so that we don't have to make a guide or a doctrine or just get on our butts to tell them to do it. So that's all my advice when it comes to these things, as far as I know and have seen. You have to have unity. You have to have centralization. You can't have puppet states. You can't have multiple states. You know, it's always been the idea of one leader. There's one leader, there's one people, and there's one nation. And that's, you know, or one empire, sorry. And that's going to be your group and your nation. Puppet states split the activity, and they risk a rebellion. It's like a feudal system. You have puppet states. It's like you give the puppets the ability to obtain loyalty to their leadership, and therefore they have the ability to betray you in the future if they even wanted to. Allies, you know, they don't really split your activity, but you can't really trust them. Yeah, I'd rather a puppet state than an ally because they're, you know, you have control over them. You can maintain their loyalty like a feudal system. Still not reliable though, or trustworthy. When it comes to groups that follow your ideas, almost like a puppet state, but I call these satellite nations. Never seen a satellite nation? A puppet state is a puppet state answers directly to the leader. A satellite nation is more, it's kind of like a puppet to the alliance. They follow your ideology, they follow your ideas, they're based off your aesthetic and ideas, but they're not really a direct they don't really directly go to, they don't really submit loyalty to that leader. They submit rather instead to that collective. Like during the Cold War, you could say that Poland and East Germany and all the other Eastern nations that were part of the Warsaw Pact were satellite nations because they weren't really direct puppet states to the premier of Russia. Because in fact, the premier of Russia during that time after the Stalinist era was more or less, it's a figure put there. But um, that's my policy. So even satellite nations that follow the Richterist ideas, I just tell them to merge and join my group because the centralization combines activity. You know, people say, well, you'll have more men because that group will have people in that group, and well then bring them over here. It's the same exact thing. It's not going to hurt that they're in the same group as yours. You're not really spreading anything. Um, Lewis has a very similar policy, except he permits puppet states. Lavo is a very, very cautious man. He allows allies to an extent. You have to be very, very trustworthy and reliable, like me, but he does also puppet states. I'm not a huge puppet state kind of guy because I've had them before. They kind of rebel. People kind of rebel against you because they don't really like Richterists, but they surrender because they lost or whatever else. And so, you know, so that's what I think with when it comes to the groups. So unless you have like 20,000 Robux, a good following, good number of followers, and you know you're competent, you know you're going to lead this nation, and you know for a good guaranteed fact that you can do it, then go for it. But like this terrain group, their leadership. Let me show you. They're launching as Christmas break, but we're sending over officers to help train them. You know, they I don't know if they launched yet, but that's their activity right now. They get 10 or 5 people on every so often. That's really about it. Check out Tiskland, who I don't think has launched either. I've had hiccups. I remember make a video, I get the hiccups, I almost swear. Um, these guys, they don't have a game out yet, so they haven't launched either, but they have only 30 members. If all these guys joined in on one group, let's say Israel, because that's the main group of all these people, I think the most, the motherland group of all these other knockoff groups or whatever of their collective and ideas, they should all join that group, and then we get about 250 something members if they all joined in. Then they could make a startup, and that's how it all goes. I know a lot of people actually didn't like the idea of doing Israel because a lot of people, um, surprisingly, are against Israel because I guess there's a lot of people that are pro-Palestinian or I don't really know why. I don't really care why, so I'm not going to go into that. But you know, so a lot of their people split up and created their own groups, even though they disagree with their leadership. I mean, what's that going to do for you? All these groups are going to die, and the Israel group's going to die as well. And then what? Well, what usually happens is a lot of these groups just stand around and do nothing. They're like, well, we'll do a relaunch on my birthday because that's when I get money. I can buy ads. We can launch for 10,000. They launch for 10,000. They get active and then they die again, and it repeats. And you think to yourself like, okay, give up already. Give up already. Quit Roblox or something. They don't give up. They're like, oh, well, you know what? We'll do it Christmas time, and they do nothing. You think, well, at least host trainings, at least host patrols, at least do raids with the 10 people you have in your group. Nope, nope. Let's wait till this time to launch, and that's what they do. It's like a drug when it comes to power. It's a drug within a drug. This game itself can be addicting, but people that with power comes addicting to the point where they won't do something that benefits everyone altogether. And it sucks because it affects my groups, it affects everyone else's groups, and these people could be a part of something greater. It used to be the allies versus the Axis. It isn't like that anymore because there's so many different groups. There's so many different collectives. Because people keep splitting up again and again and again. And people ask me, how does it affect me? Because I've always had a good following. I've always had a good number of people. Well, while that is true, I also have to admit that it gives out more ideas for people to join. Because people prioritize what they should do when it comes to groups. A lot of people like Italian groups, a lot of people like French groups, a lot of people like British groups, and they prioritize those groups based on what they see first. For instance, a lot of people loved the Terrai aesthetic. Then they joined Korea, because I was, I guess, an even better aesthetic. In my opinion, it really wasn't, but it was a better aesthetic according to a lot of other people. And so with these priorities, if we were doing Korea, and let's say a lot of people like the TRI aesthetic better, so it makes a group that's kind of like a Roman themed, and their interests just go off. It just kind of just splits people all over the place. It's not like there's two sides and one against the other with a neutral side. It's now it's like it's all over the place. And a year ago, I advocated for this. In fact, a year ago, I was the first group to say, or no, I was the second group to say, we are not Axis, we are not allied, we're not even independent. No, sorry, we are independent. We're not even neutral. We're independent. We're third party. We're going to do our own alliance with our own ideas. We're going to take on the Axis and the allies, and we're going to win this. That was my mentality. And this was proper for that time because it really was just Axis versus allies. But, now there's a fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth alliance. When I thought a third alliance, I thought, a third and a fourth alliance on the sides. So you have Axis and allies and two other alliances on the side. Now there's like 10 different alliances, and it's like, okay, we went a bit too far with this idea. So now it's kind of all over the place. Then you have other genres. Now you have a Cold War genre. Now you have a modern genre getting all active. And you have all these other genres getting active. And, it just splits apart everything. And with that all being said, I guess you could really say that, what are we going to do? What are we going to do with this all happening? And I mean, like I said, there isn't really a solution. I'm going to say this. If you are not good at leading, you shouldn't lead, but who's going to step down? No one wants to step down. A lot of people that are leading think they're in a very good position. They think that, they're doing really well and that they have potential, even though they've gotten nowhere for the past 6 months they've been doing their group. They can't accept it because they're so paranoid about service. They're so intolerant. They lack so much self-discipline that they just have to have some sort of power. And I don't get people can't really adapt to it. I mean, I make alts and I join other groups. That's kind of my excuse because I know I don't join people either. Ever since I served Tarek, or I don't know, ever since I've served Nate, I've done my own thing because I just can't anymore. I showed people like Nate specifically, hey, these guys hate me, they're corrupt, they want to take me down, and they're contributing nothing to our group. And you know this for a fact because you even argued with these guys yesterday who said they hated your ideas and don't care about your ideas, and they're going to ignore you and do nothing about it. But they don't do anything about it either way. So I take action against them. And I'm the bad guy because I use unorthodox methods of removal against them to get them out of the group. So when I'm trying to do good things and I get yelled at or whatever in a group, I just can't take it anymore. I just, things like that, I just couldn't. So with that all being said, what am I? What are we gonna do with all these people that you can almost relate to a drug with how cut they are with power and stuff. I mean, I don't really know. What they could do is I would prefer for them to go begging for ranks in another group, to be honest. Or they could do, like I said, a merge with smaller groups. I'm not saying join a big group. I'm just saying that, if you're not good at leading, join someone else. If there's two smaller groups and both want to merge, create a bigger group, cool beans, do that because that will benefit both of you. But no one wants to do that. Everyone wants to be on top, and that's where we fall. That's where we're going to fall. And I can't really just make a movement saying, hey, we should just destroy anyone that's a minor group so that we can, make more room for people to join more groups and get more activity going. That's not gonna work. As far as I can go, I only focus on the big groups. I don't really focus on the smaller groups that have little activity. In fact, no one really does. I don't really see a point in minor groups if no one's going to really care for you. If you're just going to have that small 15 people are online type deal. So, with all of that being said, frick, figure it out. I mean, not the best guy to be giving advice based on reputation, but who really cares at this point? I'm speaking logic. And when I speak logic, or anyone speaks logic, you just got to listen. It doesn't really matter what reputation of supposed quote-unquote immorality you've had. That's just how it is. So, whether this helps or not, I'm hoping someone out there hears me and says, you know what, I'm going to take a stand, I'm going to make a change in my Roblox career, and I'm going to join someone else. Good for you. If you're going to do that, good for you. If not, screw you. Screw you. Just kidding. No, but um, that's my take. You know, in fact, for my groups, I created a policy saying that you are not allowed to own a group if you're in service of myself. You can be in another group until actually this will eventually change when I come back. In 2020, a policy will be released saying you cannot have any other allegiance or dual loyalties to anyone else but me. This was always the case from the start, but by dual loyalties we mean national basis. So you're the primary your group that you're gonna be in and stuff, things like that is what I mean. I mean, obviously you're supposed to put me above any other human here on this platform if you're gonna join my groups, but now we're getting to a national level. If you're gonna join Scotland, your activity in Scotland must be majority based. Your activity must be majority. Everything must be majority based in Scotland. It must be a priority. It must be. There is no dual loyalty. If you're another group in this World War II genre, and it's active, you should probably leave it because we're not too fond of anyone else that isn't with us. So that's the policy. And it's not because I'm paranoid. It's not because I'm ignorant. It's because I want to run a group and I want it to be successful. And it's not going to be successful if we don't have these rules set in motion. You know, not to sound big ego mad lad here, but people get that when they follow me. They get that the reason why I do these things is for the benefit of my groups. It's not for something selfish of mine. As selfish as it seems to give undying loyalty to one person, and that same person almost seems like he praises himself. As egotistical as it sounds, it benefits the country because you have a human being giving orders. He's saying actual words, and through that, they can direct you, they can guide you. A nation can't really guide you. It's an idea that everyone collectively holds. It's a destiny everyone collectively holds that everyone agrees to and abides by, rather. A nation doesn't have a brain. It doesn't have a mind. It can't tell you what's good and what's bad. A constitution can. An idea can potentially, but not exactly. And that is why you need a leader, and that is why you give your loyalty to that leader and figure, because he is the one telling people what to do. And you must abide by that loyalty unconditionally, because even if you disagree slightly in the sense of negative criticism or destructive criticism, or in a sense of no point at all saying anything, it can affect the morale of not just the people around you, but of the leader himself and his self-confidence, which is really, really bad for the sustainability of that nation or group. I know I got really in depth with this, and I know this is just a game, but on this game does use real life policy. So that's why I use real life for many examples. And that's why I take this seriously, because it can collapse easily. People that tell me, well, you're taking this too seriously, I see their group and it's dying because they don't really care. They're here to have fun. Good for you. Have fun after you get all your work done. I have fun all the time after I get my work done. After all the serious stuff is done, we have our fun. We have our raids, we have our role plays, we have our emergence, we have all our stuff after we get all the hard work done, after we get the economy set up, after we get all the politics out of the way, after we get all the loyalty, all that set up, we start doing our own fun. But, apparently I'm this irrational, disgusting, vile human being that has no knowledge about orthodoxy or morality, according to a lot of the opposition. Fair, guys. They're your fair point. They're always right. They're always going to, I'm up here for people to listen, to give advice to, and people still treat me like trash. So, it's whatever. Do a good deed. It's a test. It's really a test. People are testing me to see if I'm willing to still give advice and help them out even if they're against me. But, don't worry about them. People are people. Let them have their opinion. That's the difference between, if I was really, really against freedom of speech, I would have just silenced everyone. But I'm always up for a debate. If it's rational. I did that last spring. I didn't clarify. I'm willing to debate anyone, anything. I went so far out of my levels of I'm like, I'll do literally any topic, any debate. I was so free on ideas that I didn't realize people could sway that and manipulate that to their own advantage, to the point, let's to ridiculous trollish topics. So, debate if you want, but keep it to keep it realistic here. I'm not gonna debate something obviously really stupid or dumb or irrelevant. So on top of all that's my policy. That's everything. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I went on this for a bit of while. I know these are kind of long. These are kind of long, but a lot of podcasts, a lot of other shows, they go on for about 2 hours and a half. Okay, I've said this a million times. When you listen to these things, to put it on in your car, or when you're playing a video game, or when you're just scrolling around doing nothing, or if you're like me, just watch through all of it, even though I'm not really doing anything on the screen. You just sit down and listen, or even when you're going to bed, you can listen to these, and you'll go to sleep, you wake up, do it again. That's all you really can do. So you can find time to watch these. It's not really a big deal if they're about 40 minutes long at most. In a rarity, about an hour long. Rarely do I have anything about an hour or an hour and a half long. It's usually 30 minutes or less. And I've seen a lot of popular YouTubers that have it at about 35 minutes or even 40 minutes. Or like, I saw the Rad Brad playing Star Wars, and his was like an hour and a half. And I skipped through it because I'm not watching an hour and a half of Star Wars. So hopefully you all enjoyed this. A very great day, and we'll do more of these talks in the future. I mean, I have been for the past 2 months. So have a great day, everyone. Hopefully, you'll follow this advice, and see ya.